Okay, so in our first video we talked about OSI Reference Model, layers 7 all the way down through 1, and we talked a little bit about the first layer, which is the physical layer, and then we talked about the data link layer. Then in our last video we talked about the network layer and the transport layer. Well today, right now, we're going to talk about layer 5, and that's our session layer. Now, device A wants to communicate with device B. And so how exactly does that happen? Well, just like we make a phone call, we actually dial some numbers and we let it ring, we wait for the other person to pick up. Well, when one computer on a network needs to communicate with another computer on a network, they actually have to open up a same kind of session. So this device, device A, will say, okay, I need to send some data to device B. So it knocks on the door and says, hey, are you ready, or can I send you some information? And device B will go back to device A and say, yes, absolutely, please. You can send me some information. So device A will go back to device B and say, okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and start sending you some information. And so device B will say, okay, great. Let's open up a session and let's start exchanging some information. So the session layer then sets that up, then manages the actual session of sending data, sending back the acknowledgement, sending data, sending back the acknowledgement, and so forth. Until device A says, that's all I got, I'm done. And device B says, well, fantastic. He says, thank you very much. Thank you very much, and that will conclude our session. So, the session layer of the reference model opens up communication between two devices, manages the communication between those two devices, and then terminates the communication between those two devices. And that's what you'll need to know for certification examination. Let's go up one more layer. Layer 6, we have presentation. So what do things look like? Presentation, like when you open up a device and you're on the device, and whether it's a touch screen or you're using the mouse and keyboard, how do things present themselves on the screen? How do they present? How do they look? All of that is handled through the presentation layer protocols of the OSI reference model. So whether you're looking at icons, text boxes, anything else that you require to input or output data, all of that's right here. We're also going to include encryption. For those in cybersecurity, you know that the layer 6 handles encryption or decryption. So whether you're trying to hide data or how you're trying to hide data is right here in the presentation layer. And then finally we go to layer 7, and that's the application. The application layer. Application. Good job. So this is how the user actually interfaces with the device itself. Now, what kind of applications are there? You know, many of us are familiar with all Microsoft products, or if you're in Linux, or if you're working in the command terminal, the command prompt or the terminal, depending on what system you're using. Even if you're HTTP, even if you're on the web, HTTP, if you're doing some web surfing. All of these things are applications on the top end of all of this, and that's how you're actually interfacing, or you're actually communicating with the device itself. And so that's really what you need to know here. So we've covered application, presentation, layer 5, session, layer 4, transport, layer 3, network, layer 2, data link, and finally down here, the physical layer. Now all of these layers play a very specific role when two devices on the network are communicating with one another. Now you have it. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.